The scene unfolds with Alex, the protagonist, returning home after a long day. As he approaches his house, a sense of weariness washes over him, a familiar feeling after a demanding workday. He anticipates the simple pleasures of unwinding, perhaps preparing a meal, catching up on some reading, or simply enjoying the quiet solitude of his own space. However, his expectations are abruptly shattered as he notices Karen, his notoriously entitled neighbor, standing near his front door. Karen's presence immediately sets off alarm bells in Alex's mind. He's had previous encounters with her, experiences that have left him wary and on edge. He knows her reputation within the neighborhood, a reputation built on a foundation of self-importance, boundary crossing, and an unwavering belief in her own perceived superiority. He braces himself for what he knows will likely be an unpleasant interaction. As Alex draws closer, Karen's demeanor shifts from casual waiting to an almost predatory alertness. Her eyes fix on him and a forced smile stretches across her face. Alex offers a polite, albeit hesitant, greeting, hoping to minimize the interaction and quickly retreat into the sanctuary of his home. However, Karen intercepts him before he can reach his door. She launches into her request without preamble, her tone demanding and presumptuous. "I need your house keys," she states as if it were a simple, everyday request like borrowing a cup of sugar. Alex is taken aback by the sheer audacity of her demand. He stares at her, momentarily speechless, trying to comprehend the situation. "My keys?" He finally manages to stammer, a hint of incredulity in his voice. Karen's response is vague and evasive. "Yes, your keys," she repeats. "I need to check on something inside your house." She avoids direct eye contact, her gaze darting around as if she's trying to conceal something. Alex's suspicion grows. "Check on something?" he asks, his voice now laced with caution. "What exactly do you need to check on?" He's not about to hand over the keys to his home without a clear and justifiable reason. Karen's vagueness only serves to heighten his apprehension. She hesitates, her initial confidence faltering slightly. It's a private matter," she replies, her tone becoming defensive. "I don't need to explain myself to you." Alex's wariness solidifies into firm refusal. "I'm sorry, Karen," he says, "but I'm not comfortable giving you my keys without knowing why you need them." He emphasizes the importance of respecting boundaries and private property. "My house is my personal space," he continues, "and I don't give access to just anyone without a proper explanation." Karen's facade of polite entitlement begins to crumble. Her face flushes with anger, and her voice takes on a sharper edge. "Don't be ridiculous," she snaps. "It's not a big deal. I just need to take a quick look at something." She attempts to downplay the situation, portraying Alex's reasonable caution as an overreaction. Alex remains steadfast. He reiterates his refusal, explaining that he values his privacy and security. He suggests alternative solutions. "If there's a genuine emergency," he says, "you should call the authorities or contact my landlord. They can handle the situation appropriately." Karen dismisses his suggestions with a wave of her hand. "That's not necessary," she retorts. "I can handle it myself if you would just cooperate." Her refusal to involve the proper channels further fuels Alex's suspicion. He senses that something is amiss, that Karen's motives are far from innocent. The conversation escalates, with Karen becoming increasingly agitated and demanding. She accuses Alex of being uncooperative and implies that he's hiding something. Alex refuses to be bullied. He stands his ground, his resolve strengthened by Karen's increasingly erratic behavior. He reiterates his refusal, emphasizing that he won't give her the keys without a valid reason and a clear explanation of her intentions. He feels a growing sense of unease, a feeling that he's being manipulated and pressured into a situation he's not comfortable with. As the argument intensifies, Alex feels increasingly harassed and unsafe. He decides to disengage from the confrontation. He turns towards his front door, intending to go inside and end the interaction. Karen, however, is not easily deterred. She follows him, continuing her barrage of demands and accusations. Alex manages to reach his door, fumble with his keys, and finally get inside. He slams the door shut and locks it, leaving Karen outside, still fuming. He peeks through the peephole and sees her pacing back and forth, muttering to herself. He wonders what she was really trying to do in his house and what her true motives were. He feels violated by her attempt to force her way into his home, and he decides to be more cautious about his interactions with her in the future. The encounter leaves him shaken and uneasy, wondering if this was the end of Karen's strange behavior. He replays the conversation in his mind, searching for clues, trying to decipher the real reason behind Karen's insistent demands. He knows one thing for sure: he can no longer trust Karen, and he needs to be prepared for any future encounters with her. The peace and tranquility he had anticipated upon returning home have been shattered, replaced by a sense of unease and a lingering feeling of violation. The aftermath of the initial confrontation leaves Alex feeling unsettled. He paces through his house, replaying the encounter with Karen in his mind. He tries to understand her motives, to decipher the real reason behind her insistent demands for his keys. The vagueness of her explanations, her evasiveness, and her increasingly aggressive behavior all point to something more than just a simple check on his property. He considers the possibilities. Was she planning to steal something? Was she trying to access something specific within his house? Or was it something even more sinister? The uncertainty gnaws at him, fueling his anxiety. He feels violated, his sense of privacy and security shattered by Karen's blatant disregard for boundaries. He wonders if he should report the incident to the police, but hesitates, unsure if her actions warrant official intervention. He decides to wait and see if Karen makes any further moves, hoping that the incident was an isolated event. However, Karen's obsession with gaining access to Alex's house doesn't end with her failed attempt at obtaining the keys. Her sense of entitlement, fueled by her inflated perception of her own importance, refuses to accept defeat. She sees Alex's refusal as a personal affront, a challenge to her authority. She seethes with resentment, her anger growing with each passing moment. She feels justified in her demands, convinced that Alex is hiding something and that she has a right to know what it is. Her frustration boils over into a calculated plan, a scheme designed to force Alex to comply with her wishes. She decides to escalate the situation, to use whatever means necessary to achieve her goal. A short time later, Alex is startled by a loud banging on his front door. He approaches cautiously, peering through the peephole. He sees Karen standing there, her face contorted with anger, her eyes flashing with a mixture of rage and determination. Behind her, he notices a police car parked at the curb, its flashing lights casting an eerie glow on the scene. Alex's heart sinks. He knows what this means. Karen has called the police, fabricating a story, portraying herself as the victim, and painting Alex as the perpetrator. He opens the door, bracing himself for the inevitable confrontation. Karen immediately launches into her fabricated accusations, her voice dripping with false sincerity. She claims that Alex had assaulted her, that he had become aggressive and threatening when she simply asked to borrow his keys. She embellishes her story with dramatic details, portraying herself as a helpless victim, cowering in fear. The police officers listen attentively, their expressions neutral, assessing the situation. Alex is stunned by Karen's audacity, her willingness to lie so blatantly. He tries to interject to tell his side of the story, but Karen interrupts him, her voice rising in feigned distress. She accuses him of trying to silence her, of intimidating her. The officers, caught in the middle of this escalating conflict, ask Alex to step outside so they can hear both sides of the story separately. Alex explains what really happened, recounting the initial encounter, Karen's demands for his keys, his refusal, and her subsequent escalation. He emphasizes that he never touched her, that he only wanted to protect his privacy and security. He expresses his bewilderment at Karen's actions, her willingness to fabricate such a serious accusation. The officers listen to his account, their expressions remaining neutral. They ask him if he has any witnesses, any evidence to support his version of events. Alex admits that he doesn't, that the entire interaction took place between him and Karen. He feels a surge of frustration. It's his word against hers, and he knows that Karen is a master manipulator, capable of weaving a convincing narrative, even if it's based on lies. The officers then speak to Karen again, listening to her embellished version of the events. She maintains her composure, her voice steady, her story consistent. She even produces a small, seemingly insignificant detail, a feigned bruise on her arm, claiming that Alex had grabbed her during the alleged assault. Alex is appalled by her deception, her willingness to stoop to such lows to get her way. He knows that he's being framed, that Karen is using the police as a tool to intimidate him, to force him to comply with her demands. He feels trapped, helpless against her manipulative tactics. The officers, having heard both sides of the story, are faced with a difficult decision. They have no concrete evidence to support either account. They can only rely on the testimonies of the two individuals involved. They warn both Alex and Karen about the seriousness of false accusations and the potential consequences of making false reports to the police. They advise them to resolve their differences peacefully and to avoid any further escalation. The officers then leave, their flashing lights disappearing into the night, leaving Alex and Karen to face each other once again. The tension hangs heavy in the air, the unresolved conflict simmering beneath the surface. Alex knows that this is not the end of the matter, that Karen will not give up easily. He fears what she might do next, what lengths she will go to in her quest to control him and his property. He feels a sense of dread, a premonition that the situation is about to get much worse. The flashing lights of the police cruiser recede into the distance, leaving Alex standing in the doorway of his home, a profound sense of unease settling over him. The immediate threat of Karen's presence has dissipated, but the lingering residue of her actions, the violation of his privacy, the sheer audacity of her lies, hangs heavy in the air. He watches the taillights disappear around the corner, a hollow feeling growing in his chest. He knows this isn't over. Karen's obsession, her sense of entitlement, won't simply vanish with her arrest. He feels a chill despite the warm evening air, a premonition that this is just a temporary reprieve. He steps inside, the familiar comfort of his home now tainted by the evening's events. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow in the corners of the room, seems to whisper of Karen's presence, her invasive intrusion into his life. He locks the door, the click of the deadbolt a small, insufficient barrier against the fear that gnaws at him. He checks the windows, ensuring they are securely fastened, but even the strongest glass seems fragile against the force of Karen's rage, her determination to breach his boundaries. He feels exposed, vulnerable, his sense of security irrevocably shattered. He paces through the rooms, the familiar layout now a landscape of anxiety. He replays the evening's events in his mind, Karen's escalating aggression, her fabricated accusations, the way she twisted his words, turning him into the villain in her twisted narrative. He feels a surge of anger, a burning resentment at her manipulation, her complete disregard for the truth. But the anger is quickly replaced by a deeper, more unsettling feeling, fear. He fears what Karen might do next, what lengths she will go to in her pursuit of him. He fears for his safety, for his privacy, for his sanity. He sits down on the sofa, his hands trembling slightly. He tries to rationalize what happened, to understand Karen's motives, but her behavior defies logic. It's not just about entitlement, it's something more, something darker. He remembers the look in her eyes, the cold, unwavering determination. It wasn't just anger, it was obsession. He shivers, a wave of nausea washing over him. He considers his options, trying to formulate a plan of action. He knows he can't stay here, not tonight. The house feels contaminated, violated. He needs to get away, to clear his head, to find some semblance of peace. He thinks about going to a friend's house but hesitates. He doesn't want to burden them with his problems, to bring Karen's chaos into their lives. He decides to check into a hotel, a temporary refuge from the storm that has engulfed his life. As he packs a bag, he thinks about the future. He knows he needs to take steps to protect himself. He needs to contact his landlord to inform them of Karen's actions, to request their assistance in dealing with her. He needs to document everything, every interaction, every instance of harassment, creating a record of her behavior. He needs to install security cameras, to gather evidence in case of further incidents. He needs to contact a lawyer to explore his legal options, to understand his rights. The list of tasks seems endless, overwhelming, but he knows he has to do it. He has to take control of the situation to reclaim his life. The next morning, after a restless night in the hotel, Alex returns home. He approaches his house cautiously, his senses on high alert. He half expects to see Karen waiting for him, ready to resume her campaign of harassment. But the house is quiet, eerily so. The broken window has been boarded up, a temporary patch on the gaping wound in his home. He steps inside, the silence amplifying his anxiety. He checks every room, every closet, every corner, half expecting Karen to jump out at him. The house feels empty, yet her presence lingers, a ghost in the machine. He begins the process of reclaiming his space, of trying to erase the traces of Karen's intrusion. He cleans the areas she touched, scrubs the surfaces she defiled. He replaces the locks, reinforcing his sense of security, however fragile it may be. He installs security cameras, their unblinking eyes watching over his property, a silent deterrent against further incursions. He contacts his landlord, explaining the situation, requesting their support. They express their concern and assure him that they will take appropriate action. As the days pass, Alex tries to settle back into his routine, but the sense of unease remains. He jumps at every unexpected sound, his nerves on edge. He avoids his backyard, the scene of Karen's vandalism. He avoids contact with his other neighbors, afraid that they might have heard Karen's lies, that they might now view him with suspicion. He feels isolated, cut off from his community, his sense of belonging shattered. Then a week later the police contact Alex. They inform him that they have recovered something from his property, something that might shed light on Karen's motives. They ask him to come down to the police station. At the station, Alex is shown a small metal box, its surface scratched and dented. He recognizes it immediately. It's the box he kept in his backyard, hidden behind a loose brick. He had forgotten about it, a relic from his past, containing personal mementos, letters from old friends, photographs from family vacations, a small, tarnished locket that belonged to his grandmother. He gives the police permission to open the box. Inside, along with his personal items, they find something else. A collection of photographs, not his photographs but photographs of him. Photographs taken without his knowledge, photographs of him going about his daily life. Leaving for work, returning home, walking his dog, even sitting in his living room reading a book. The photographs are interspersed with handwritten notes, detailing his routines, his habits, his movements. It's a dossier, a record of his life, meticulously compiled by Karen. The realization hits Alex like a punch to the gut. Karen wasn't just trying to control him, she was obsessed with him. She had been stalking him, watching him, studying him, invading his privacy in the most intimate way. Her demands for his keys, her accusations, her vandalism, it was all part of her twisted obsession, her desire to possess him, to control every aspect of his life. The revelation is chilling. It's not just about entitlement, it's about something far more sinister, a deep-seated psychological disturbance. Alex feels violated, his sense of self shattered. He understands now that Karen's behavior wasn't just irrational, it was pathological. He had been the object of her obsession, the focus of her twisted fantasies. The incident leaves a lasting scar on Alex, a constant reminder of the fragility of privacy and the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of everyday life. He knows he will never fully recover from the experience, but he hopes that with Karen's arrest and the legal proceedings that follow, he can begin to heal, to rebuild his life, to reclaim his sense of security. He knows the road ahead will be long and difficult, but he is determined to move forward, to put this nightmare behind him and to reclaim his life.